We've all been there. Something you didn't plan for. It's your health, your spouse, your job, something that now stands in the way. As Mike Tyson reminds us, everyone has a plan till they get punched in the face. Anyone can make a plan, but very few can execute when the pressure's on. Well, imagine having a way to handle things that get in the way, even turn the obstacle into an opportunity. Welcome to A Call to Rise. I'm your host, Joel Landy, founder, entrepreneur, former naval officer, and this is where we help you build resilience, which is the ability to manage high levels of challenge and disruption while maintaining high levels of effectiveness and well-being. Because goals without setbacks are uncommon and big plans without resilience are just not happening. So if your job or life demands staying and playing at a high level, you're exactly where you need to be. So let's jump in. I almost did not hit the record on this one, so this is going to be a little raw, a little rough. So last Tuesday, I'm sitting at my desk. I just come back from a successful business trip in Savannah, Georgia. And there was a ride that night. I'm a cyclist. I've shared about this. Great group of local riders. Some of them race. And of course, this night means I'm going to have to really push myself super hard. It's the most challenging thing I'll do as an athlete by far, is these Tuesday night rides. And, if you're a cyclist in Georgia and it's July, you're watching the weather. The weather's incredibly unpredictable. I had 3 apps open. I'm looking at 3 radar models that are changing over 3 hours and in between client calls. And at 5 o'clock, which is the no-go time, I finally said, you know what, I'm not doing this. I'm done chasing the weather. I'm over it. And I'm just going to go ride indoors. And of course, I'm going to get the check in the box, right? But instead of feeling good about that, something didn't sit right with me. And it's something that I'm wrestling with, and that's why I didn't want to hit the record button. It's this idea of, am I going to continue to expect myself to do hard things? And in fact, harder things than I think most people my age do, and I know that's true. And so today I'm not coming at you like I figured this out, but I know the question's real, and I know avoiding it is exactly the kind of thing that a man does after he has already settled, and that's what today's about, right? So I'm not gonna avoid it, but I'm not gonna let you avoid it either with me. And so here's the question I'm wrestling with, right, is have I settled? Other ways of asking that question: have I plateaued? Am I playing small? Am I taking less of the right risks? Have I made it too easy? Am I in this position now where I want to make things easy? Have I lost my edge? These are all different ways of saying the same thing, and it's wounding, right? It's bruising. And it kind of ties into, I do a lot of coaching. I coach a large sales organization in North America, over 400 people. And, men are hunters and salespeople are hunters. But what happens when a hunter stops hunting? Well, if it's a guy, he drifts, he settles, he stops chasing. And then there's the harder question underneath that question, the one that I'm really struggling with, right? The one that's keeping up is, who am I if I'm no longer chasing? And that's today's conversation. Right, so the gut check, and I have one guy that I was doing business with, we were trying to figure out a way to do business with, and he really, in a very interesting way, created a condition about trust. And he said, at some point, guys have got to be willing to show each other their guts. Meaning, show me your belly, not your guts like you're brave, And I thought, wow, that's kind of rugged. Like, that was his measure of how honest are you going to be with me. But, this idea of avoiding tough things. If you're a high performer, you run on the hot side for years. It's dopamine winning, it's cortisol, on the grind. But burnout is real, but it's manageable, right? And sometimes you're going to feel like you hit a plateau. But if you're burned out, you can get a plan, you can get a coach, right? But so burnout is real. And then the second thing too, this idea of wearing out, right? Your knees, your back, your sleep, our nervous system gets over revved. That's a bit trickier. But like burnout, it's manageable. Go see a specialist, get an exam, get a blood workup, do physical therapy, get the last greatest enzyme peptide stack, which I'm about to jump into, and you get back in action. You'll have your guns blazing. But the third one is the trickiest, and it's probably the most fatal one. If you're not burning out and wearing out, you're easing out. And that's when you slowly lower the bar on what you expect of yourself. And for me, I'm always comparing myself to other people my own age. That's kind of the barometer for me. But once you start doing it, you continue to do it. And, what I'm wrestling with is the idea that, comfort's expensive, right? And I'm not talking about the rest day, which everybody needs, the rest weekend, which I had the last 2 days. The great vacations, I was just in Cancun. It was amazing. But I'm talking about avoiding the difficult things that keep you strong and on fire, In 3 weeks, I'm going to go ride a race bike on Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. And were it not for somebody pushing me into that, I'm telling you, this just wasn't going to be happening, right? And so I've got people in my life that are doing that. But, here's a saying that I want us to be reminded of, and it's worthy of our time, right? Hard times produce strong men. Strong men produce good times. Good times produce weak men, comfortable men. And weak men produce hard times, right? And so this idea about, being in the middle of a lifestyle where you're constantly pushing yourself, that's something that we need to talk about today. And not to be faked out, comfort is a trap, but so is success. If you put a certain amount of money with enough of predictability in a man's life, it's the perfect recipe to keep them from pursuing the life that they actually really wanted to live. All right, and that does lead to plateau. And that's a hard spot to be in when you're successful and yet something underneath keeps telling you, I need to be fed. Like there's something not there that needs to be there. So let's move towards something positive, right? And it's bound up in this research, right? So what does the research say about this topic? And this is a really interesting thing. One of the longest ongoing studies of adult life ever conducted out of Harvard, right? For now over 80 years. And they followed men from their college years into their 90s, right? Which is kind of cool. That's a big study. But here's what the research found. There's 6 factors measured. By the time these men turned 50, there were 6 things that predicted who would be thriving physically and mentally 30 years later at age 80. Okay, here they are. Number 1, a stable marriage. Whoa, that's convicting. Number 2, a mature way of handling adversity, not avoiding it, not exploding at it. That's what Recall to Rise is all about. That's what we do in our resilience training. Number 3, not smoking. I got that checked. That's awesome. I have a cigar once in a while. I think it's awesome. Number 4, going easy on alcohol. I can probably go a little bit easier, but that's not been a challenge. Number 5, staying physically active. That's one of my hallmark parts of my life. And then last, number 6, keeping a healthy weight. 6 things, right? Measured before 50, predicting the back half of a man's life. And on top of that, the single strongest predictor of a life-term health and happiness in the entire study. It wasn't income, wasn't career achievement. It was the quality of a man's closest relationships, not the number, but the depth of them. So I want you to sit with that for a second, right? Because it's not abstract. It means that the drifting that we're talking about, this isn't vague, right? You can measure it. It shows up, and 30 years later in these areas you wouldn't expect, but your mind, your body, and the people closest to you, right? These things show up. And they don't just show up, people are like, what happened to this person? It was so unannounced, it was so unpredicted. Not really. Not when you see the research of a study like this, right? So here's a gut check, right? Here's 5 things. I want you to sit with each of these, right, and really think about it, right? Here are 5 signs that maybe you're in a position where you've settled for something that you shouldn't be settling for, a relationship, a job, whatever, your body weight, right? Number 1 is this idea that you're really busy, but you're not happy. Americans love being busy. They hide behind it. I know it's hard to admit this, but the truth's eventually going to set you free. But, the person that's always, they love telling you how busy they are. Chances are, there's something behind that. Number 2, you catch yourself, saying at my age, instead of more like, hey, let's go, right? Let's do it. Send it, and going back to CODA in 3 weeks, right? I have a friend in Southern California. His name is Bob. He would not let me get out of this, and I'm so grateful for him, and I'm super fired up with my preparation to go there and to challenge myself on that circuit, right? Number 3, your conversations revolve more around memories than possibilities. Hey, I'm all about nothing wrong with sharing great memories. I look at my iPhone. I look back on trips I've taken. But a man who has looked backwards too much has stopped expecting anything of his future. And we all know that, right? So that's something that you really got to get a gut check with. Number 4 is you've stopped doing the things that make you feel alive and set apart. I go back to this track day, And, once you remove the fear and the doubt from anything, right? You'd be surprised about how many ways you can still make life work on your terms, right? Maybe it's not exactly what you want, but it can be good enough, which is better than giving up. Let that sit with you. It's better than giving up. Giving up on yourself, giving up on the things that you love to do. Then lastly, number 5, you're no longer a part of a group of others that expects something from you. The other day I roll up to this bicycle ride. It's a Saturday. It's a 60-mile ride. It's pretty challenging. And one guy, I show up, I'm like, hey, I'm going to be chilling. And there's one guy in the middle of this fast group that says, hey, you're going to do fine. Just come on. We'll chill with you kind of thing. And of course, that's all I needed to get pushed out of the nest, right? So here's another series of challenging questions. Number one, am I becoming wiser as I'm getting older, or am I just less courageous? Number two, am I letting go of my ego, or am I letting go of my edge? Number three, am I redefining success, or just have lowered really expectations? Number four, am I at peace with who I am, or making peace with playing it smaller? And number five, am I doing what matters most, or avoiding the cost of doing what matters more? All right, so let's land the airplane where we took it off. For me, I got to find a group of people, men, who expect more from me. I shared about that guy, Mike Carter, and give him a quick shout out in the bike group. But that's not the whole answer, right? It's an honest move, and it's one move. An honest move is usually how a man stops drifting, not with a grand reinvention or revelation, but with one thing he can actually do instead of just thinking about it. I'm going to double back to that as we land the airplane. I want to double back to the experience I had Saturday morning. It was very powerful, right? So here's your challenge, right? Before the next episode drops, do one thing. I just want you to do one thing, right? Share the thing that landed hardest with someone that you trust in this podcast, and then have a real conversation. You won't regret it, and it's going to be worthy of your time. You're going to look back on it and think, wow, I'm really super fired up that I did that. So you can always drop a comment, tell me what landed and what you're thinking about doing next time out of the blocks. I'm going to go back to that situation with a friend at a group bike ride on a Saturday morning in North Atlanta, right? And I'm coming back from just having other focuses. I'm getting ready to be focused on riding this racetrack experience, and my fitness dropped slightly. And it's easy to start in your head to start making small concessions, right? Small concessions, small changes. Yes, my training is taking me in a slightly different direction for a month to get ready to ride a race bike at speed, but also I am an endurance athlete and a cyclist, and I built a great base over the last several years, and I've not been away from my bike for any measurable time that would, tank my fitness level. But I saw it Saturday morning. I saw it again. I saw the peddler up to the ride thinking, I'm just going to ride in the third group, which is a slower group. And I keep hearing this voice. It doesn't have to be this fast. It doesn't have to be this intense. It doesn't have to be this challenging. It doesn't have to be those things. And I'm here to tell you, it doesn't sit right with me. And when I was riding to the bike, I'm like, I ride to the group ride. I'm like, I'm just gonna go slower than I need to go. And of course, there is that one man and that one voice, right? There's that one person that brought me back into a place where I just felt like, I can go a step further. I can work a notch higher. I can go a little further. I can work a little harder. I can put myself in an uncomfortable position. And that's easy to do when there are people around you that believe in you. And so I'll leave you on that note. I'm looking right now, that's what I'm building. I'm building a core group. I'm building a network of people that expect and even demand something of me at this stage in life. And I think that's a healthy way of thinking. And I know some people, they're going to hear that and be like, whoa, that's a little extreme, dude. Demand? Yeah, demand. I think it is. It's demanding. I think that's exactly where I think the best comes out in us, right? And we're wired for safety. We're wired for comfort. We're not wired for risk. We're not wired to do courageous things. That's just what our brain anatomy and physiology is. We have to come to grips with that. And how we do that is managing and balancing what is possible with others around us to help us bring us closer to what we might call our true potential. And that's really what this podcast has been about from the beginning. Is that my heart has been, I want to help people get past whatever could potentially be in the way of them giving a best effort at this stage in life. What was the best effort 3 years ago might not be achievable, but something close to it absolutely is. And for some of us, a best effort that we achieved 3 years, we can do far better in 3 years or 10 years from now. That's just really the reality of life. It's all on a case-by-case basis. But if you're in a position right now where,
hey, you like this, right? I want to do the deep dive. I want to ask myself some deeper questions. I am in growth mode. Yeah, part of me, like I told my wife yesterday at the end of, we were resting over the weekend, and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I said, I just got to tell you, man, we were resting. We were watching the second half of the World Cup yesterday, and I said, I got to tell you, I'm just a restless soul sometimes. And it's hard. It's hard. It's hard for me sometimes to rest. It's hard for me on a weekend to read a book. I love being in action. I love being on the front line. I love being, exploring and adventuring and pushing. And but I know now that right now in this season of life, what I'm really, really, really wanting is a group of men that really expect more from me in different areas, and definitely as an athlete, but also spiritually and in business, just different as a family man. And that's a really great mindset for me to have. So if that's the spot you're in, drop a comment. But either way, let me know what you're working on. Let me know what resonated. Your feedback does a lot for our podcast. Would love to know what you're thinking. But if you're in growth mode and you're wanting more out of life, you've landed in the right place, let's journey together. Let's get you to the next step. And let's see what's possible in this chapter of life. We'll look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. See you then.
If today's conversation challenged you, it's a real signal you need to do the work. It's no longer an option for you, so don't push that feeling away. It's reminding you of the cost of playing small. Success is easy when things go well, but resilience, that's cultivated when things go sideways. Make sure you subscribe, and if this episode brought you value, pass it on. It's how we grow the tribe. We'll be back, hopefully next week. Until then, I'll see you next time. Here is your call to rise. Rise up so that others can rise.